Welcome to the Brad Bodnerchuk podcast. I am your host, Brad Bodnerchuk, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by none other than Cam MacDougall. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, man.
This is a blast. For those of you that don't know, Cam and I have a bit of a history. I've been lucky to call Cam a friend, a confidant, and someone who I look up to for, I'm going to guess now, like 4 or 5 years. And actually, I wanted to, before we get into this, I wanted to challenge you, Cam, with a bit of a question, a hard hitter. I know you can handle it because you're a strong dude. When was, to your memory, the first time we ever met? Take me to that moment. Do you remember? Or what is it for you, I should say?
Wow, that is really racking the memory. I was like, okay, I can think of something witty on the spot. That's great. This is no problem. But then you go into the memory banks, my major weakness. I think if I haven't forgotten, it was at like a Rubens shoes competition at Engineered Bodies in Port Coquitlam, like years ago.
You know what? It's a great start and a great place to plug such a great thing like Rubens shoes and plug Anthony and his team at Engineered Bodies. But I'll give you a big on that one. I never attended the Rubens shoes. Just the timing of it never really worked out with my schedule. The first time we ever met was kind of similar event-ish. Was the official opening or grand opening of Rain City Athletics. And back in the day, you and Dylan were doing the Barons of Beef thing. I was doing the Moosehead thing. I brought the beer. You guys brought the beef.
That's right.
And then we connected there. And I was like, oh, he seems like a really cool dude. We chatted for a bit. Obviously, you were busy because you were slinging animal protein. And we'll get to how wildly different your life is now. But it is honestly, man, and we'll get into this more, I'm sure, but it's an honor to call you a friend. And it's been so cool to be by your side for a lot of the growth that you've experienced over the past few years. But now that we're geographically separate, it's been really cool to have the opportunity because of things like social media to keep a tab on you and watch your growth. So for those of the listeners that don't know who you are and don't know what you do, and we'll get to the backstory, we'll get to the history because that's all very important, but let us know now today who you are, what you do, and then the last one I want to know, but also listeners as well, why you do what you do.
You got 20 minutes for this answer?
I've got a cap of 4 hours, so you go.
Awesome. Well, first things first, I'm a human on Earth, which is beautiful. It's a wonderful, blissful thing. I am a high performance coach. I call myself that because it's the only thing that I can really attribute to what I do. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I'm a breathwork facilitator and a nerd, all things human performance. And in a nutshell, what I do is I teach people how to blend spirituality with fitness to take their embodiment practice to the next level. So we bring in meditation, visualization, breath work, and combine it with strength training, nutrition, and more of the conventional stuff to engineer superheroes and turn people into these powerful, powerful beings that we naturally should be by design, in my opinion. And I do that because for me, my body has served as a vehicle for change in my life. And everything that I've created, everything that I've done in my life has been through this vessel. And the more I learn to fine tune my vessel and the more intimate I get with my vessel and its inner workings, the more powerfully I show up in my life and the more I get done and the more enriched my life really is. So I want to return that favor to everybody I come in contact with.
And how do you do that? Obviously, and we'll get into more of the business model and what it is, but InBodyFit is the name of what you offer, is the name of your business. So what does it actually look like? So you've talked about, meditation, breath work. There are obviously some like physical work that you're doing with your clients in regards to programming for them to do training, etc. But like, what does it actually look like when someone interacts with InBodyFit? What is that? How does that exist?
Yeah, great question. So everything falls under the breathe, flex, feel, transform modality. So the pillars of the business are that breath is our foundation. Breath is the gateway to our body, to our spirit. And by flexing, by first breathing and then flexing and getting into the body and moving through training, we learn to cultivate what I call the conscious flex, a building of the body. So if we use fitness and nutrition in that sense, then I teach people how to truly feel, because fitness kind of pushes you away from that in a sense where it basically pushes you to numb out so that you can get bigger, stronger, fitter and go to another place. Whereas I teach people to truly embody, and that's where the meditation practice comes in. And through that modality of breathe, flex, feel in various forms, various fashions of experiences, courses, coaching, that kind of stuff, I transform people. And it goes all the way from, working with my, elite level one-on-one clients all the way down to the online experiences that I run, and, soon to be the in-person whenever things open back up. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
How much do you feel what you do is truly out of like interest and desire, like you just like love what you do? And how much of what you do feels like it's your duty? It's like, this is why you're here.
Yeah, I think they're kind of connected in a sense where I believe that when we're doing what we're meant to do, we enter a state of flow state. And when we're in these flow states and in these states of joy and excitement, because we're good at what we're naturally here to do, we get excited about doing it. So every day I wake up absolutely fired up, whether it's, getting on a sales call with someone I've never met to talk about InBodyFit, or to celebrate, a 16-week transformation for one of my clients, or talk to one that I've been working with for 3 years that has totally become a new person. I get so excited, so fired up. And I wouldn't be able to have this impact and these interactions with people if I wasn't doing what I was meant to be doing, if that makes sense.
So it's like this, it's kind of like natural entanglement. It's not forced. It is, maybe that's why you're experiencing so much success, and we can get into how you define success or how society defines success. Maybe that is how you have experienced so much success, is because you're in so much alignment with what you're doing. There is so much, I will not to put words in your mouth, but like honesty behind it. And then a byproduct of that is you yourself feed off of that so much. And I find for me, when I work with clients, and I think you and I have kind of discussed this in the background a bit, or at least we've planted the seed, but like that's the juice worth the squeeze, right? When we see, and this is where it's not about us, it's actually about them, it's about the client, but we see that we were able to, through whatever the modality is, to pull something out of them, for them to see within themselves how powerful or how special or how incredible they are. And we're just there, part of me, to, ask the right questions or give them the right programs, whatever that is. But that for me is where I get the high, is when there's that interaction and that feedback. But I'd love to get your take on this. How do you stay the course when there isn't perhaps that tangible result for either you as the coach. You're not seeing what you want to see as regards to progress, however you're measuring it, and the client as well isn't seeing that. How do you cope with that? So if you're doing that 16-week check-in and they're not where they want to be, you're not where you want them to be, what is that dynamic like, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, great question. And it all comes into what I've gone through in my past. And so for me, I go into every interaction without expectation. So I go into every interaction trusting that I have this connection with a person for a reason, and they're going to get something from the interaction with me, regardless of if it's biceps, a booty, or a six pack. And even if it's not, solving a health problem or reaching peak levels of energy, like they say they want at the beginning, I go in with, you're going to get what you need to get. And for me, fitness isn't just something we use to get fit. I use fitness to learn a person's subconscious tendencies and patterns. And in that, I'm going to relay to them what they cannot see for themselves. It's kind of my barometer. And so no matter where that person has gotten to after our interaction, I know that one way or another I've planted a seed. And the only way that I know that is because in my past, and I'm sure we'll get into some of that in the future, maybe not, I don't know. But I was a wrecking ball. I was a complete menace to society. And at the time, people tried to fix me. People tried to help me. Did I listen? No. But guess what were the first things I remembered when things started turning around? They were those things that those people told me years and years and years ago that turned into, plants that grew into trees, that were just these little seeds. So for me, I'm never going to judge somebody's experience after 16 weeks because the work that I do with people might take 2 to 3 years to flourish one day. But then I know that one day they're going to reach back out to me and they're going to be like, wow, dude, that changed my life. And I couldn't see it at that point in time, but I know now. No, they're not my responsibility. For me, you can, there's the expression, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? It's the most, cliche expression for this. But it's true, right? I provide people with tools, and if they don't want to put in the work or have too many blocks in front of them to put the tools to work, then that's on them, right? That's on them. And so for me, people are for some people in the coaching world, this is really funny, is that for some people, the biggest transformation is just paying the money, right? Some people go, oh my goodness, I'm actually willing to commit to something, and they get an instant transformation, and then they don't do anything in the program, but they don't care because they already got that initial hit from paying the entry fee, right? Versus somebody else that pays and then gets all the tools and gets the benefits that way. So for me, it's just, I trust that whoever's coming into my world, who's seen my content, who picks up on my vibe, is coming to me for a reason. And I trust in my ability to deliver, and however they want to perceive the results that they get, that's okay, because I know that I'm bringing it every day. And that's why for me, alignment's everything. I don't work with everybody. If I'm on a sales call with somebody, or, a transformation call with somebody, a free consult, whatever, and I don't feel alignment, I don't feel a vibe, I don't feel excitement to work with that person, I don't bring them into the InBodyFit community, because for me, there has to be that mutual reciprocation. And when there's that mutual reciprocation, you rarely don't get some form of transformation.
Yeah, that could be a challenge though as well, right? When you're on that phone call and you have your core values as a business and as the CEO of your business, but at the end of the day, like, you're a business, and you're just like, you want it to be a business, there has to be revenue generated. So that would be a challenge, I'm assuming. And maybe you haven't come up against that because you've been able to stay so true to your values. But I'm wondering how you feel perhaps you would cope with that. Because there's a lot of people out there right now listening who maybe have started a side hustle or have a gig. And they're like, yeah, man, I get the whole value thing. But guess what? I got rent to pay and my kids got to eat and I got to put, food on the table and clothes on my back kind of thing. How do you delineate between like the necessity for like this thing has to generate income and staying true to what InBodyFit is and what your vision is for that and everyone that's existing in that community as you already described?
Yeah, great question. You're going to have to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And so you can hear me say this on this podcast and you're like, yeah, cool. You have a successful program. You're a successful coach. Great. Easy for you to say. I need to pay rent. So I had to hire that person that I really didn't vibe with. But one thing that I will say is that I've done that. I definitely have. I'm speaking from experience. But the thing is that those people drain your energy. Right? When you're constantly following up with someone that isn't doing what you're teaching them, you're always needing to put more into that person. And if you're putting all your energy into that person, guess where you're taking that from? Your ability to go and find other people that are in alignment, that will build you up, that will create more energy. So it's more of a paradigm shift where it's like, if I choose to work with this person, how much are they going to drain my energy and ultimately drain your bank account? Because when you're an entrepreneur, time is money. Versus if I say no to this, couple $1,000s or whatever that might be, and I open myself up to the possibility of going to find someone that's more in alignment, I might actually build my energy up, ultimately being able to generate more income, create a better community, and have much more long-term growth in the future. So it becomes just an idea of which resource you're willing to give up, whether it's your time, which is money, or the physical money of that revenue coming in from that individual.
Yeah,
right?
it's almost like a hidden cost when you get those bad clients that you really should break up with.
Totally.
But you grab their credit card information out of fear, right? Out of this idea of lack.
Totally.
Changing speeds a bit, and I want to spend a bit of time on this. We don't need to make this the whole kind of theme of this conversation. But as I mentioned to you last week when we were chatting, I'm taking a much deeper dive into understanding the dynamics of my own relationship, not intimately, but also my friendships, my business relationships, and really using this platform as well to bring on a vast variety of people to understand their relationship with relationships. And I think it'd be really interesting for you, if you're open to it, to discuss more of that transformation. You can go back as far as you want and you can tell the listeners a story about kind of like where you were at versus where you're at today. And obviously you are in a relationship, you're in a loving relationship with, normal challenges that we all face. But I'm more interested to hear your story from a inner relationship and how you've worked on that relationship to allow you to then show up more for obviously your partner, but obviously show up as well for your clients, but first and foremost showing up for yourself. So take us back, if you want to, like way back when, to when you were a wrecking ball, and what that relationship may have been with Cam back then versus the work that you have done and where that relationship now is at with yourself for that inner relationship.
Mm-hmm. So I think that your inner relationship is by far the most important relationship you have in your life, because you treat everybody else either as a manifestation of the complete opposite of how you treat yourself, or you treat everybody as the exact way you treat yourself. So it has a lot to do with how you interact with other people, long story short. So for me, I was a drug dealing gangster teen who, grew up in the downtown east side of Vancouver, right? Which is, heroin capital of North America. And I grew up doing some pretty gnarly shit in my life. And I spent most of my time in and out of juvenile detention as a teenager. I spent a lot of time in very dangerous situations, and I spent most of my time low-key trying to kill myself, right? Whether it was through drugs or fighting or putting myself in extremely violent, dangerous situations. That was pretty much my norm. And the underlying premise of all of that was that I didn't feel worthy of life. I didn't feel that deep down inside, I actually loved myself or even liked myself, let alone paid any attention to my wants, desires, and needs on a real level. So for me, going through that, it became extremely evident to me when I started transitioning out of that self-love and really starting to nurture myself was the most important thing for me to do to start creating ripples around me throughout my life in the relationships around me. So for me, my first experience with that was with fitness. And that's why fitness, has such a close place to my heart, is because, when I was in juvenile detention, a guard once taught me how to lift properly. He was a bodybuilder, and he taught me, he's like, hey, instead of being pissed off and angry all the time and doing all this crazy shit, why don't you put that energy into the weights? Why don't you go and move that weight and move that energy and build your body? And he's like, and you're going to get ripped. You're going to get jacked. Girls will like you. Go give it a shot. And at that point I was like, oh, okay, well, that sounds kind of cool. Right. And so I started doing that. And over the course of, training and building my body, I started really learning how to develop a relationship with it through injury, through, the painful workouts, through ego, through all of these different things. And so leaving the kind of, gangster kind of drug dealer life that I was living when I was younger into more of the fitness side of things, it really transitioned me out. And it transitioned me out through this practice of self-love. Now there was still a ton of ego involved. There was still a ton of, messy, murky mess that was around that. But it still provided me with a seed. It still provided me with a thread to start following. And over the course of my journey, I ended up becoming an assistant vice president of a financial company, making tons of money. I was a CrossFit coach. I was like 225 pounds, 7% body fat. I was this machine. I was this, high performance, kind of, poster child at that point in time. And I still felt really miserable. And I still felt like, I was doing all these things to pretend I was something that I wasn't. And it wasn't until I found spirituality and meditation and really kind of allowed for the facade to fall away that I actually truly was able to start loving myself without any conditions or expectations. And when, I dropped kind of the I'm a big muscle man facade, and I dropped the I'm a finance guy facade and left all those things behind, I was just left with, okay, well, who am I? Right? And when I found out who I was deep in my core, I was actually able to fall in love with myself. And that created a chain reaction in my system that has now got me to where I am, because everything I do now is starting within myself and moving outward. It's an inside out transformation, an inside out way of living versus an outside in that's way too common in society these days.
Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I mean, I've heard that story multiple times now, and I appreciate you sharing it with me on this platform and my listeners. And I wasn't witness to the juvenile detention cam, but I was definitely witness to the 225 cam. And I didn't see you as someone who was still, experiencing pain. Like we always would joke, we'd have a good time. We're at the gym and lifting heavy weights and sweating and high fives. There was a lot of joy there. I think that's something that's really important for everyone to understand, that And we hear this now, I think, more often than we would have, say, 10 years ago, which is a really healthy thing. It's like that mask of masculinity, if you will, of like, you know, maybe we're not really putting something on, but we're really putting something on. We're not being 100% real. And that's something that I challenge my power circle with. And I'll do with you now more moving forward. Like when I ask you how you are, like, I don't want good. Like, tell me, like, are you actually good? And if you're not, like, let's talk about it. Like, and I find it so easy if people just revert to that. This is a broad stroking statement. No one is willing to or wanting to go deep. But I feel like people like you on platforms like this, and obviously through your coaching and your program, I feel it's almost, and I don't want to sound too, what's the word? Like pushy, but I feel it's almost like your responsibility with the platform that you have is to share that story so you can allow other people to go like, oh, so it's okay if I say like I'm not okay. And then using someone like you, using your experience to go like, okay, well, how do I exactly do that? How do I develop an inner relationship? Is it, and I'm not trying to sound funny here, I'm being quite serious. Is it like standing in front of the mirror and say, I love you, Cam MacDougall, talking to yourself? Or like, what would be some of the tools that you have found that have worked for you along the way? Maybe you still doing these exercises to continue building that relationship. What would be some of the easier low hanging fruit that you would advise either, you know, clients or my listeners to start strengthening that inner relationship?
Yeah, I have some pretty cool stuff coming out in the next little bit. That
I like it.
I won't. I'm not going to share it because it's a project that's very close and dear to my heart. But I'm going to have some pretty cool tools coming out for people in the near future, just exactly on that. So I won't spoil all the beans, but I will give your listeners some stuff that I feel is very important. The most important thing I believe in is awareness. There is no ability to become another version of yourself without awareness, because then you're always falling into the same programs over and over and over again. And you know, for me, I'm so happy that you brought up the fact that you knew me during those CrossFit days, because on the surface, I looked happy. I was, you know, I'm an energetic, fun human being. But when I look at videos of myself back then, I see a different person, a totally different person. And it wasn't that that person was bad, but that person did not have the awareness at the time of the patterns that were showing up, right? And so the only way I was able to transition out of that was through a meditation practice. And a lot of people, you know, meditation's become this kind of, you know, very mainstream thing of like, you know, relaxation, calm your mind, all those things, which are true. That's great. I'm not harping on those at all. But meditation fine tunes your ability to become aware of your state of being. And when you become aware of your state of being, you're able to catch things that aren't in alignment with who you want to be. So to further kind of my answer here, it's one, becoming very clear on the person you want to be, on what you want to embody, right? Becoming very clear on that, from how you walk to what you wear, to how you show up, to how you sound. And then fine tuning your awareness so that you can go inward to take out and uproot all of these old patterns that are preventing you from becoming that person. Because the only thing stopping any of us from accomplishing anything that we want is a set of programs. It's a set of beliefs. It's stories. It's not truth. It's not reality, right? That's why one person's, you know, a millionaire who's really ambitious and another person is broke who's really ambitious. It's because that person who's a millionaire believed they could be a millionaire versus the person that has the money stories about they're always going to be broke. It's all a story. We all have the, you know, before I say this, bearing in mind social structures and a whole bunch of stuff that does put different people at different social inequalities. Ceteris paribus, we all have the same abilities within our bodies to create outcomes, right? So for me, it's really clarity, awareness, action. There must be clarity. We must foster awareness, and we have to take action. And here's the thing about the action. It's not always going to feel good. Actually, quite contrary. Most of the time, it's going to feel like shit. So we have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable in making the transitions that we want to make. And to be honest, I could give you 10 steps to, embodying this. And it's like, it would sound like some click funnel. But for me, it's not that. It's work. It's devotion. It's working on your meditation practice. It's catching yourself when you're acting on your patterns, no matter how shitty it makes you feel. And, I'll be vulnerable right now. My partner and I are moving stuff at this point in time. So we're talking about relationships, and you want the reality. So I'll walk the walk here. We're moving through stuff right now at this point in time in our relationship. And this morning I walked out of my office and everything inside of me said, go downstairs, just go downstairs, make your smoothie, go for a run, just do that. And I knew that was the pattern. So what did I do? I stopped and I fought against every single bit of me that wanted to turn left, and I turned right. And I went into her office and I asked her how she was doing. Right? So it's correcting the action. And that shit takes work. This isn't a 10-step process. This is a devoted process. So that would be kind of my high level kind of tips or tricks or applications for embodiment.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that you mentioned like the 10 steps. I think that is one of the what's the word? Achilles heels of the society nowadays, obviously more so in North America, but really globally, is everyone wants that quick, like, okay, like, yeah, but can I do it now? Like, will it work for me now? And to what you're saying is like, this is a process, and how you described it is very similar to how my coach taught me, and now how I coach my clients as well. Is he calls it BEAR, BEAR, beliefs, emotions, actions, results. Like the tip of everything is your beliefs. Like as soon as you believe something, then that will lead to the emotions. Those emotions will lead to the actions, and those actions will lead to results. And for me, I just use that all the time. Like, what do you actually believe? Because that is at the core of all of your results. If you aren't living the life that you want to live right now, your relationship, your bank account, your body, your mind, look at your beliefs. What are your beliefs about your relationships? What are your beliefs about money and financing? What's your relationship? Growing up, what was money like in your family? How did you guys talk about money? Did you talk about money? All of these things, and sitting there, like you said, and going through that process and being kind enough to walk us through your experience this morning actually reminded me of the Viktor Frankl piece where he talks about the stimulus and response, and in between that is your choice. And a lot of people, especially in relationships, we just are stimulated or triggered. We hear triggered a lot nowadays. We're triggered and we respond right away. But what is actually there, and what I feel like my interpretation of how you've described that progress that you've made with your inner relationship, is you recognize, you're aware. So when something stimulates you, you're aware of it. And then you take time, even on this podcast, you took a moment, you closed your eyes, you breathed, like you took a deep breath and exhaled, and then answered the question. So that was a choice. You didn't just respond. So for a lot of people, I think, and myself as well, I tell that to Lindsay, my partner, is I'm challenging myself now more to hold space for that choice. So stimulus, and in between stimulus and response is your ability, as each of us have. What are you going to do? Are you going to revert to, like you've been saying, revert to those old patterns that have been, your story up until now? Or are you going to turn right and ask your partner, how are you doing today?
Bingo. I could not agree more.
Bingo. I appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing that. One question I did want to ask you, going back more to the fitness piece, because that is really what you find yourself, and we're going to dive into what that means for you. But really what you find yourself doing with your clients is like, helping with fitness. But that is the question. How do you now define fitness? What is fitness? because for so long fitness was an aesthetic. For so long fitness was the weight on your back when you're doing a squats. For so long fitness was how fast you ran the 40. How do you, Cam MacDougall, within the InBodyFit community, how do you and your clients define fitness?
It's a great question, because I low-key hate the word fitness now. Because and when I'm talking to people about it, I'll be like, oh, what's your vitality practice look like? And they'll look at me like, what do you mean vitality? And I'll be like, what does your fitness routine look like? And then they're like, oh, well, I do that. And I'm just like, okay, so we're stuck here. So fitness is one of the most subjective words out there. CrossFit comes out, the fittest on earth. It's like, well, have you seen a CrossFitter try and do it, an Ironman? It's like, they're not the fittest there, right? Or climbing a mountain, they're not the fittest there. So it's a very subjective term. So I try to stay away from it, to be completely honest. But when the question does come up, like it just did, I like to segue to vitality. To me, fitness is vitality, and vitality is a holistic, embodied approach to well-being. And I define that using the 5 bodies, using the similar to the koshas in yoga, where it's an optimized physical body, right? So you're strong, you're nourished, you're powerful, you're in this vessel doing very well. I look at the energetic body. So how are you cultivating your state? How is your autonomic system working behind the scenes? How are are you aligned? Are the different plexes of neurons in your body signaling the right glands to secrete the right hormones? Like, is that energetic system working well inside of you? And then I look at the mental body, right? So looking at, how's your mental health, your mindset, right? We really take a look at diving into that. Look at intellectual health. Are you curious? Are you learning? Are you stimulated by the process? And finally, your spiritual health and your spiritual body, right? Are you turning your vehicle into an antenna for consciousness? Because, a lot of people go on the spiritual path and they own the spiritual body, but they can't even put their feet on the ground because they're pretty much light energy and they're floating, in space. And for me, consciousness is already enlightened. We didn't embody for no reason. We embodied to learn in a vehicle. So for me, that doesn't make sense, but it's a huge part of the journey. And then you look at, someone that might just focus on intellectual health, right? Or in the intellectual body. They might know all these things, but when it comes to, emotions and, the mental body, they're totally disconnected. So for me, fitness in the conventional sense doesn't exist anymore. For me, it's vitality. And I define vitality by optimizing those 5 bodies that I just spoke of.
Can you be running at 100% in those 5 elements? Or is it like anything else where if I'm going to I'm going to start running now. So guess what? If I'm running a lot, my back squat's probably going to go down a little bit, like historically speaking, pardon me. Mm-hmm. So like I can't be, maybe this is a story, feel free to jump in and be like, whoa, this is a story. But I feel like I can't be the world's best dad, the world's best partner, the world's best entrepreneur, the world's best. It's like when you do one full on, there has to be a debit from something else. So is it possible in the paradigm that you're speaking of when you're working with your clients and you're talking about vitality, is it possible for all 5 of those to be running at 100%? Or is it very normal and natural to say, like, I'm investing heavily on the intellectual piece, so maybe emotionally or spiritually, I'm at a 75? How does that correlate, or does it?
Mm-hmm. So the way that I work is I don't believe that you work on one at a time. I believe in practices that allow for you to embody them all in the experience. So, for example, with the breathe, flex, feel modality, everybody in InBodyFit starts their their workout day with a breathwork sequence. And in that breathwork sequence, they're building their physical body. They're working on their, people will start crying before workouts, right? They're working on their emotional body. They're working with their nervous system, right? So they're working on their energetic body. They're getting insights on their life when they drop out of the conscious mind, working on their intellectual body. And ultimately, they're tapping into new levels of energy, working on their spiritual body. And then they move into their workouts. And in their workouts, I teach them how to be conscious when they move, how to be connected to their body, how to stay rooted in what they're doing, which does the same 5 things as the breath work. And then at the end, it always ends with meditation, visualization, all these different things. And that, once again, causes them to dive in and to embody all of those 5 bodies, right? That's hence the term MacDougall. So for me, I don't see them as a compartmentalized approach. I see them as units that play off of each other, but we need the right system in order for them all to do what they're supposed to do. Now, that being said, a lot of people will say, well, yeah, I'll do all this stuff, but I don't want to do the breath work. That stuff's not, I'm not down. It makes me look weird, right? They're like, I don't want to sit in the gym and start breathing. Everyone looks at me funny, Cam. Why are you making me do this? And to me, then I would dive in and I would say, okay, the mental body is kind of showing up right here. There might be some physical body showing up right here where that human being might not feel safe to do what they got to do. And maybe there's a little too much intellectual. Maybe they're analyzing the situation too much. So then, through that process, I would work with that person on helping them understand that and unpack that and start to bring in a new version of themselves to be able to move that. And through that, we would start to rebalance the equation. So for me, it's not a doing one versus the other. It's just this constant balancing act of bringing things into alignment.
I like that. It reminds you when you're talking about having your clients do breath work before a workout, right away my mind went to, have you heard that Tim Ferriss story? I think there's a YouTube clip on it where he's working with coaching young entrepreneurs, and he's trying to help, similar to what you were kind of saying, trying to help this individual, I believe it was a female, kind of irrelevant, but helping this budding entrepreneur deal with rejection and deal with discomfort. So he said, what I want you to do is go into that coffee shop, and this could have been scripted, who knows, but it's still entertaining. Go into that coffee shop. I want you to order a coffee, and as soon as you order it, I want you to wait for it. While you're waiting for it, you're going to do it lying on the ground. Have you heard that story?
He talked about that in the 4-hour work week,
yes,
as one of the challenges was the lay down challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think that's so, I mean, I haven't done it. I don't know if I have the strength to do that, but I picture people that do that. I'm like, that's awesome because you're going against so many, we've kind of touched on this already, so many of those societal norms of like, you're not supposed to lay down when you order a coffee. You're supposed to stand up and wait. Could you see yourself doing that? I feel like you could do that.
Dude, I do that. I do those social experiments all the time. I love them. That's one of my favorite ways of challenging myself, is doing things like that. For me, one of the funniest ones that I did back in the day when I was a bit more of a loose cannon in that sense, was I wore a banana suit on a flight to San Francisco. Right. So I did that because I was playing with my friends. We had a challenge going on, but I was like, I'm going to outdo all of them. And I told them what I was going to do. And they're like, you're not going to do that. You're like, there's no way you're going to do that. And I remember being like, oh my goodness, am I going to do this? And I had a moment where I said, why would I not? And then I was like, well, people will think I'm crazy. People are going to think that I'm wearing this banana suit. What's going on? And when I did it, I felt so liberated. And I was sitting there at the gate in a banana suit by myself with a briefcase flying to San Francisco, and the sweat that was coming down and the looking of like, oh my goodness, what am I doing, was so funny for me to observe, because did I ever see any of those people again? No. Did that ever have any adverse effect on my life beyond that instant, that moment, or those whatever 3 hours that it was? No. But I made this huge idea that if I did it, I was going to die. Right. And that's the pattern. That's the story that we get stuck into. And I love Tim Ferriss, was a huge kind of inspiration for me in a lot of that stuff, because for me, breath work's the same. I go into the gym, I sit right in the middle of the weight room where everyone's just doing their thing. And I'm just, and I just go into these states, these altered states. And then when I stand up, people are like, what are you doing? And the thing is, though, is that when I used to do that, and then I would just go and throw 3 plates on, and I'd just be doing it like it was nobody's business, people would start coming up to me and they'd be like, what were you doing over there, man? Right? So, we have all these stories and we have all these ideas and all these limitations, but when we break through them, we become superhuman. That's the thing. That's the whole thing about societal programming. And I'll go on a tangent, so I'll have to bring myself back here because I'll get fired up. But it's society has programmed human beings to think that we're these helpless little kind of minions in this cog. And to me, that blows my mind. One of my mentors and teachers, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I absolutely love, he's amazing. He says we're gods in the flesh. And I totally resonate with that. You look at these monks and what they're able to do, these Shaolin monks and what they can put their bodies through. And you look at like people like Wim Hof and all these individuals that are doing these things that people are just like, what? It's because they're learning to tap into their superhuman powers as beings. And there's this one research study that I've seen, and there's a cup and they put a bunch of fleas in this cup. And when they pour the fleas in the cup, the fleas are just jumping out everywhere. It's a total mess. And then they take a piece of saran wrap and they put it over the cup, and the fleas are jumping and they're hitting the saran wrap. After about 3 days, they take that saran wrap off and the fleas don't jump out of the cup. Now, the trippy thing is that their offspring will also not jump out of the cup, because they now are programmed to believe that there's a ceiling on the roof of the cup. And we're, biological organisms just like a flea. So for me, all these ideas of I can't wear this thing, or I could never do that, or I don't like it, it's cold, are just stories. They're programs. They're not real.
Yeah, the flea reminds me of the crabs in the bucket story. I'm sure you've heard of it, where if
the
you
Chaos song, right?
Yeah, great song. Great song. Shout out Chaos, Canadian artist. No, the idea of if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket and one tries to get out, the rest will just pull that crab down. And
Yes.
Listening to you describe it, and this is going to be very real for me, and maybe one day for you as well, if you're lucky enough, if kids are in your future. For us, it'll be a reality sooner than we probably want it to be, but Lena and Cole will be going to school at some point. And it's just like, looking back at school, it's like everyone sits in a seat and everyone faces the same way. Obviously, this is traditional school, public schools, and private schools as well. And it just programs us. And this could be a whole other podcast. But it then, like you said, it programs us to believe that this is the way. You just do this. Be quiet. Don't ask any questions. If you do ask questions, it has to be this way. If you get a 40, you're a failure. If you get a 90, you're a success. And then this is like what is being written in our heads. And to what you were saying earlier and what I've been taught, it is all beliefs. Talking about Shaolin monks, like they're able to do that stuff. And look even further back, like samurai warriors, they would meditate on their death so that it wasn't a thing. They weren't afraid of it. They've already accepted it. And that allowed them to be so free and then to go into battles and truly perform, because there was no fear. There was nothing holding them back. So it's a belief system. And it's so cool and inspiring to see you facilitating not only obviously like badass workouts and breath work, but also helping your clients through your platform, like rewrite those beliefs and help them tap into like, no, like you don't understand, you're badass in a big way. And Dr. Zach Bush talks about that as well. He talks about like you actually, every single one of you, so you, Cam, and me and everyone else listening to it, like you're actually a miracle. Like the fact that you're here, take it back to how many millions, hundreds of thousands of sperm were just trying to be the one, and then you were the one. Like that in itself. And there's the fact that we grow inside of, you know, our mothers, and that whole process is just out of this world. But it all starts with beliefs. Banana suits or not, do those uncomfortable things. And that's something, and I don't want to throw my dad under the bus here, but that's something that I'm challenged by as well. And perhaps you can take a moment and shed some light on this with others in your either family or social circle that are challenged by the way that you approach your life, where you seek discomfort. Because I know my dad, he does not understand why I take cold showers every day. It actually frustrates him. And it's like, but you have hot water. Why are you not taking a warm shower? And my justification is, well, I don't justify it anymore because I'm past that. But I would say like, I want to be able to start my day doing something that I don't want to do, but then doing it anyway. And guess what? After the first 30 seconds of it, I'm golden. But I know that everything, like you this morning, every ounce of me is telling me just turn the tap a little bit. It can get warmer. Just do a little bit warmer. But as soon as I hear that voice, I'm like, nope, colder. And I get right into it. So are you challenged by the way that you carry your life now by anyone around you? And if so, how do you navigate that? Or is everyone just like, no, it's Cam doing his thing?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a lot different because people have been pissed off at me my whole life.
So this is just like status quo.
You know, so for me, you know, like the whole school thing, I got kicked out of, you know, 4 schools before I was in grade 10. And the fact that I made it through my first elementary school without leaving was, you know, almost as, you know, surprising as life itself. So for me, I have been a rebel my whole life, and I've really learned to kind of not give a shit about what people think about me. And that has its shadow side as well, because it can definitely make me less empathetic and less understanding in certain situations. But most people around me know that when I'm on something, I'm going to do it. And whether they believe it's the right thing or not, you know, they know that I'm just going to live the way that I'm going to live. And it's been like that my whole life. You know, the courts would tell me that I had a curfew. I would sneak out my window. You know, no one could ever kind of tell me to do certain things if I didn't think they rationally made sense. Right. And so, you know, I'm not the best to provide advice about that, on that, however you want to say that. But in a sense, what I would say is, like those kids that go to school and sit down and fall into these rows and these lines, people have been bred to be factory workers. And we've been bred to, you know, raised. We're not bred. We've been raised to be factory workers. And, you know, your dad, for instance, grew up in a time when that was it. You were in the cog. It was like, go to school, you know, go to university, get married, have a kid, white picket fence, life, right? And so for him, that's his whole world. And so when it comes to addressing people, it's just knowing that it has nothing to do with you, right? No matter what anybody says, no matter how they project their shit onto you because of what you're doing, it has nothing to do with who you are. It's just being put through their filter, their lens. So one thing that I always lean on, no matter how kind of flustered someone is by the most, you know, the most recent ridiculous thing that Cam's up to, is me just being like, oh, I'm just challenging their belief systems. I'm challenging their conventional way of thinking, and that's making them uncomfortable. So honor them in that. Say, hey, this might make you feel uncomfortable. I'm sorry that's the way you feel, but this is in my highest alignment. This is my truth.
I love that, man. That's beautiful. Thank you. And it's just, I find inspiration in people doing that. And you kind of alluded to it before, but even like the banana suit thing, that to me is like watching it's inspiring watching that. Like if I saw you laying down in a coffee shop, I would laugh. I think it'd be like humorous, but I probably know what you were doing. But it's also inspiring. It's like watching an artist perform on stage. Like you mentioned it you mentioned it on this call already, that idea of a flow state. But like look at, some of the world's most prolific entertainers, whether it's like currently like a Jay-Z or a Beyonce or the Beatles back in the day or the Rolling Stones. Do you honestly think, this isn't just for you, but everyone listening, do you honestly think at any point during their performance they were concerned what anyone thought about what they were doing? No, they were just doing them 100%.
Yeah.
Like, do you, boo? Like, that's what they were doing. And guess what? Guess what the byproduct of that was? The byproduct was millions of people screaming at the top of their lungs going, I want to be around that. Can I get closer to that? That's amazing. That's incredible. Like a moth to a flame. So maybe you haven't said this exactly, Cam, but I get like goosebumps hearing you describe it, and hopefully you guys do as well as listeners. Is like watching someone like Cam do something that is so in alignment with who he is. Just watch what it does to others around him, and when they see like, oh man, this is super authentic. Like this isn't like for show. This is like the real deal. Just watch. And there's a video, actually quickly, there's a video, I'm sure you've seen it, Cam, on YouTube, of a guy dancing at I forget what the festival is, it's somewhere in the States. Have you seen this video where he's dancing on the hill? He's dancing alone, and at first the video is like, people recording, kind of laughing at him a bit, and then guess what happens? He keeps dancing and he keeps dancing, and then it's one person that joins him, and then two people, and then three, and then there's like 300 people just ecstatic around him dancing. And why? Is because he was just being himself, and he wasn't threatening anybody. He wasn't being disingenuous. If anything, he was being so genuine. But society says like, oh man, like everyone's sitting down. Why are you standing up and dancing? And eventually it became like, okay, let's do it. Moth to a flame. I think that stuff's so inspiring. And I want to encourage you to keep doing that, to keep just doing you, boo.
I can't not, my friend. I can't not. And one thing I'll add to that about the banana situation is everybody on the airplane had the best airplane ride. Every single person was taking selfies with me. They were like, "Hey, banana man!" It created this energy because people sat down and they're like, "What's going on?" And I'd just be like, "Oh, I'm just doing this thing." And they're just like, wow, that's really weird, but oddly, I'm attracted to it. And people would start talking. So that works over and over and over again. And it's just a sign that human beings are not meant to be boxed. We're not meant to be programmed. We're not meant to be kept in these kind of, I guess, jail cells of who we think we have to be. We're expressive, vibrant, unique human beings. And the more we start to embody that and really bring that into our life, it just gets so rich and fun, man.
Yeah, and you kind of alluded to that when I asked you who you are and what you do. And it was almost like a bit of sandpaper for you. It was like, well, like if you want to define it, then I guess I'm this. And that's really just like, if you need to put me in a box, I guess this is the box I'll be put in. And when you answered that question, it actually reminded me of like Kurt Cobain and what he did with Nirvana, and people would constantly try and like define what that music was, and he's like, I'm just creating what's like so within me, and it's coming without, and I don't need to call it anything, whether it's punk or alternative or whatever. It's just like, I'm just doing music. I just think that's so inspiring. So I want to celebrate you for what you're doing, and I want to encourage you to keep going, man, because it's palpable and visceral, and it inspires me. So thank you for doing it. And for anyone that's listening to this, if you were on that flight, send Cam a selfie that you did with him so we can put it on his InBodyFit community so they can see how much of a beast he is for years and years. Before I do let you go, because I know time is precious for you, before I do let you go, I want to roll out the podcast red carpet. And if people do want to reach out and connect with you, or if they're interested to find out more about InBodyFit and that program, how best they get in touch, how best they reach with you, Cam?
Best way is Instagram. So just at Cam MacDougall. and hit me up there. Most definitely. You can check out my website as well, cammacdougall.com, and you'll find everything that you need in those two spaces to get at me.
I love it. Before we sign off officially, any other inspiring words, quotes, thoughts, recipes, things you want to share with listeners?
I like that. Yeah, I would say that just remember the gift that we've all been given. And when we keep that at the forefront of our mind, and I think the number is something like, life is, 1 in 7 trillion. And when we remember that, we honor it. And the more we honor our life and the more we honor this vessel that we've been given, we create these temples within ourselves. And the more that we kind of, harmonize these temples and work with these temples and clean them out and dust them off and do all the things we got to do to maintain them, we unlock capabilities inside of us that go beyond what we can even begin to comprehend. And if anybody tells you that, they're happy enough, life's good enough, it just means that they're comfortable there. And there truly is no limit to the joy we can feel, to the life we can experience, and to really what we can accomplish. And the more that we just keep bringing it back inward and working with the temple, propping up our pillars, doing what we got to do to clear out what, isn't serving us, we just start tapping into new ways of being that, I can't even use words to describe. You just have to experience them. So no matter what you're going through, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you aspire to create, just keep bringing it back to yourself. Keep being authentic to yourself. Focus on your temple as your starting point for everything that you create. And your body will become a vehicle for change in your life, no matter what.
Boom. Love it. I want to get this thing because I don't want to lose this before I'm going to do like the whole wrap up here, but do not close the window until it says that it's done on your end. Otherwise it'll be a big thing. So I apologize. I should have said that before we recorded, but now it's here.
Now it's here.
Thank you, Cam. Thank you guys for tuning in as you do week after week. It means the absolute world to me. If it wasn't for you guys, this show likely wouldn't exist and wouldn't be as fun for Cam and I because we'd just be talking to ourselves. And after a while, that would get a little bit boring. I am Brad. That is Cam. Be sure to give him a follow on social media. Send him some love and get in touch if you are looking to get InBodyFit and working on that vitality. That's it, guys. You know what to do. Until next time, be good and do good. Peace. We did it, bro.
We did it.
Don't close that window.
I won't.